Okay, guys, I'm going to go ahead and apologize in advance. I have an annoying voice, and I'm very country, so there will be an accent. But one of my friends just recently picked up Prismacolor pencil. Hallelujah! And she's telling me that there's not a lot of information on the internet that's for the absolute beginner, for people who have never picked up this pencil in their lives, have no earthly idea of what they're doing. And a lot of the stuff that she's been coming across is, well, I hate to say it, a lot of it is more kind of for the purposes of showing off. You know who you are whenever you put, say, a circle here and say, okay, you're going to draw this with me, and then all of a sudden, oh, wow, it's a whole human face. And that didn't help me at all because I did not see step by step what you were doing. I'm sure some of you guys have probably run into the same frustration where not everybody just automatically gets it. I know I don't automatically get it, and I remember the frustration of having to try to figure out how to do this when you can't afford art classes, you don't have the time for art classes, and you're just kind of out there on your own trying to learn with whatever you can find. So this first video is going to be just the absolute basics. We're not actually going to pick the pencil up right now, but the next video will actually start showing you some of the kind of techniques. Just a quick disclaimer, I do not claim to have the only way, the best way, or what have you. You'll see I'm not the best artist in the world. I'm just somebody who likes to kind of play around a little bit and learn new things. So before you start talking about on my YouTube account, if I make one, oh, this is absolute crap, I don't really care. If you can do better, by all means, go ahead. I encourage it. I'm not going to answer you. I'm not going to bother. Have better things to do. Okay, so first things first, and because I'm a nerd, yes, I did make a visual aid. We've got care of the pencils, kind of being the first thing. If you're used to Crayolas like I was, you're probably used to kind of throwing them around here, there, and yonder. With Prismacolors, you actually have a lot more pigment to wax ratio, and there's going to be a lot more softness to your cores. So the only thing that I found with Prismacolors that I just absolutely do not like is that they do tend to break a lot. Especially if you do things like I do, dumb bunny over here, I'll put them in a car and I'll have them loose in like a plastic shoebox, and then I drive like I'm stupid and they fly on the floor, and I mean things just happen to them. I would suggest from my hard-won experience here, the takeaway for you is at least put a rubber band around them so that they aren't like clacking together, and maybe roll them up in a piece of cloth or something. Or get one of those cases like they have at the store that has the elastic that holds your pencils kind of in place here, so that they don't flop around so much, preferably something with a nice hard back to it if you're like me and you're kind of clumsy and accident prone. And that'll kind of help you keep from having to do step 2 here, which is reconditioning. If you look up on the internet, they actually do have instructions. If you get a pencil and you sharpen and sharpen and sharpen and sharpen, and every time you sharpen, that doggone lead breaks right on off, and you just can't get it to work, you may have to do the oven trick, which is you get a piece of wax paper or something similar. You put them in the oven on the middle rack at about 250 degrees, and you let them sit in there and I let them sit in there through the preheating process and the cooling process. Those of you who have ever worked with molten glass are probably familiar with this fracturing that can happen when something cools too fast, and these leads are kind of prone to that. So if you're going to recondition them in the oven, you want to go ahead and put them in before you preheat, and go ahead and leave them in there until the oven is cooled off almost to room temperature. And that way they'll kind of heat up slowly, and then they'll cool down slowly. But you'll want to keep looking at them, because one of the problems that I had was that some of the wax would come out of the ends, but then you have the pigment still inside of it, so then that makes the lead a little bit drier. And if you're like me, you're a little bit nervous about doing that anyway. So the best thing is just not to break them. The other thing that I've heard people do is they'll put them in the car on a hot day, and the car just naturally is a hot box, and they just leave it in there for a few hours, and then whenever it comes out, the leads have kind of remelted a little bit and stuck together a little bit better. Here in Louisiana, you can do that almost any day of the year. You may have problems with them spontaneously combusting, in fact. As far as whenever you get to the end of a pencil, that's where we're getting to. I'm sorry, my laptop is crapping out on me. This is where we get to gluing the ends or extenders. Personally, I went ahead and just invested in an extender. If I can find it here. You can get them at any old hobby store you want to. But one of the things that you can do to extend the life of your pencil, especially if you're a cheapskate like I am, or you just don't have that much money, whenever you get down toward the end of the pencil, you can just take a new pencil and glue it. Let me see if I can find a place, and put just a little dab of glue, like right there, and then you can glue those two ends together, and you can actually sharpen almost to the very, very tail end. Be able to get as much of your lead as you want to kind of used up, because these are not the cheapest pencils in the world, but there are reasons for that. As for which pencils you'll use most, if you just went and bought a kit, you'll probably, if you're using burnishing with white, which is one of the things that I do like all the time, you'll probably want to pick up some extra white pencils. And if you do a lot of pattern drawing like Zentangle, or if you do a lot of manga, if you do a lot of anime type, where it's important to have those good dark black lines around it, cartooning, then you may want to go ahead and pick up an extra black pencil. I find those go kind of faster than any of my other colors. And in the background you hear my psychotic elder cat. Pencil characteristics. You actually, because of the pigment to wax ratio, you actually can get a lot of layers, which allows you to get a little more subtle than a Crayola. With a Crayola, you've got a certain number of layers you're going to be able to get out of it, and that's it. That's all you can do. My friend Amber was recently telling me that they actually have a spray you can spray on top of your color pencil, so that whenever you've just rubbed and rubbed and rubbed the paper and the tooth is gone, you can actually give it a little bit more grab, and you can be able to put some more on top of it. And one of the things that I love about Prismacolors, and the reason I will never go back, ever, is that a lot of times you can layer literally 20 or 30 colors on top of each other, because it does tend to be somewhat transparent. And so you can actually get this nice effect between two different colors where you can kind of blend them together and be able to get that good rich color without just a harsh line between, say, your pink and your red, and then it just kind of looks like something a kindergartner did, and then you get frustrated and throw it away, and it's not good. The hue differences is something that I make big use of. So if you got one of the kits, and Amber, the pencils that I gave you, I did this specifically for a reason, you'll notice that you have several different greens. You can get, like, if you get the 120 pencils, you'll get literally about 20 greens. And I've heard people say, well, how come I have so many greens? Oh my God. Essentially, one of the things that they do really well with the packaged kits is that they'll give you a certain number of, say, yellow-based greens and a certain number of blue-based greens, a certain number of more reddish purples versus a certain number of more bluish purples. And that's something that you can really kind of use to your advantage whenever you're actually working. For those of you who have already heard this, forgive me, I may restate the obvious quite often, but